All right, we're going to talk about the third type of equation, the general form of equations for linear relations. So we've talked about y equals mx plus b, which is the slope y-intercept. We've also talked about slope point, where this is the slope, and these two numbers tell you a point on the line. The third one we need to talk about is general form, which looks like this. Okay, don't get freaked out by the ABC. The key thing to notice is that it equals 0. Okay, so basically we shifted everything in the equation over to one side. These ABCs are just numbers. They represent integers in this case. Okay, so let's just look at an example. 3x plus 2y minus 5 equals 0. Okay, that would be an equation of general form. We need to be able to switch into general form. But unlike the other forms, general form doesn't really tell us anything useful. This one told you the slope and the y-intercept or a point on the graph. This tells you nothing. These numbers don't mean anything useful. Okay? So generally, if you have this form, you want to switch it to one of the other forms. Okay? Probably y equals mx plus b in order to find useful stuff. This is just, honestly, in next year, it'll be much more useful because when we make it equal to 0, we can actually factor quadratics so that we can find the roots, which we did a little bit of this year, but for this year we're not actually doing that. So you need to know this, but it'll be much more useful next year. So the two main rules you need to know for this is the a value, the number in front of x, must be positive, and you can't have fractions. So that means if I had a question like this, this is unacceptable. This is not proper general form. We need to transform it. So let's do that right now. Okay, so when I look at this one, here we go. When I look at this, it is negative at the start. I gotta make it positive. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna multiply the entire equation times -1. That means the left side and the right side. Now remember, 0 times anything is still 0, so it doesn't really matter. So this is gonna become positive. This is going to become positive, and this could become negative. Now, the next problem we have is that, so the first was the negative. The second problem is there's a fraction. So in order to get rid of the fraction, I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to say times 3, because that will eliminate the bottom. But I have to multiply the entire thing, both sides of the equation, by 3. Again, it stays 0. This is going to become 9x. This is going to become just 2y, because the denominator cancels out, and this becomes minus 30. This is now general form. So you just need to remember those two rules. The ways I think is like ugly stuff. Fractions are ugly, negatives are ugly. Get rid of that stuff. But you'll notice negatives at the end or even negative on the y, this value is okay. It's just supposed to be the leading coefficient, the one at the start. Okay, the other thing we need to be able to do, basically just to tell you this form isn't useful, doesn't give you any clues. The only reason it's useful is remember when we were graphing vertical lines. So if that was our Cartesian plane and that's the equation, vertical lines, the equation is like x equals -3. That equation doesn't work with any form except general form because we could rearrange that to make it x plus 3 equals 0. The other two have slope, and because this line doesn't have a slope, you can't technically write them with those two forms, but you can with general form. So that's its use. So most of the time, because it's useless, we're going to switch it. So we are going to do an example here where we're going to switch this into y equals mx plus b. So I know y has to be by itself, so let's get this by itself and move these over to the other side. So 4y equals -3x plus 5. Cool. Now I know y has to be all by itself, so I need to get rid of the 4. So I need to divide by 4, and I need to divide everything here by 4. So it's going to be y equals -3 over 4x plus 5 over 4. This is okay. This is a slope. -3/4 slope is fine. This is our y-intercept. It's exact. We will leave it as a fraction. We're done. Now I could graph this. If I was asked to graph this, I have no idea what to do. If I was asked to graph this, it's easy. So we usually switch. Now, some questions are going to say, write in general form. Okay? So instead of crying, you just have to be able to shift this. So remember, general form looks like this. Okay, we're just trying to get 0 all by itself, so everything together. So I'm going to move the y over. So 0 equals negative a quarter x minus y plus 3/5. You'll notice I wrote them in order, so it went x, y, and then the constant by itself. Now I need to get rid of the negative, so I'm going to flip the signs on everything. 1/4 x plus y minus 3 over 5. And last thing, I don't like the fraction, so I'm going to do times 4 to everything. So 0 is still 0. This is now 1x, or just x, plus 4y minus, what's that, 12 out of 5? Okay, problem, we still have a fraction, so I need to do times 5. You might have noticed if we had just done times 20 in this equation, it would have worked and gotten rid of both. Whatever, 2 steps is fine. So 0 equals 5x plus 20y minus 12. That's it. So we switched from this beautiful y equals mx plus b that we can graph into this ugly, stupid general form that is not useful at all. So the key thing to remember, I think, that's for general form, isolate it so everything is together, is 0 equals or equals 0. And then the other thing is the first number has to be positive. You can't have fractions. And when I say fractions, obviously you can't have decimals either, okay? That's not okay. That's the same as half x. All right, cool.